was an area manager at a consumer electronics fulfillment operation shipping 22,000 parcels a day. Packaging spend had increased 17% even though volume and carrier rates were stable. I wanted to remove waste without increasing damage, slowing packers, or shifting cost to customers. I compared supplier renegotiation, reducing protective material across all products, and redesigning carton selection using product-specific evidence. I audited 600 parcels, weighed void fill, reviewed damage claims, and watched packers. The largest waste came from 5 popular products defaulting to cartons 2 sizes too large because master data was incomplete. I corrected dimensions, introduced a simple carton guide at each station, capped automatic void fill dispensing, and piloted reusable dividers for internal transfers. Procurement preferred a price negotiation, but I showed that unit price explained under 20% of the variance. Quality worried about damage, so I set a stop threshold of 0.45% and inspected every pilot claim. One glass product breached the threshold in week 1. I restored its original packaging, examined breakpoints, and excluded it rather than forcing a universal rule. Before closing the action, I sampled performance across different shifts and demand conditions, so the result did not depend on one unusually experienced team or a quiet operating window. I translated the outcome into a simple frontline mechanism with a named owner, an escalation threshold, and a weekly measure, which made the change repeatable after I stepped away. I also documented the operating assumptions, named the owner for each follow-up action, and set a clear review date so that temporary controls could not quietly become permanent. I wrote the decision, assumptions, owners, and stop conditions on a 1-page control plan so the next shift could challenge the logic rather than rely on verbal context. I used both a leading indicator and a customer outcome measure that prevented a short-term productivity improvement from hiding quality, safety, or backlog age. During implementation, I stayed at the operating point for the first cycle, asked frontline employees what the mechanism missed, and changed only one variable at a time. I assigned named owners for each checkpoint and made escalation thresholds visible in the shift huddle, which reduced ambiguity when I was not physically present. After stabilization, I compared the result with the original baseline, checked for cost or defect displacement, and documented the mechanism for the other shifts. Before committing, I asked a supervisor who disagreed with me to identify the weakest assumption, then converted that concern into a measurable checkpoint rather than relying on consensus. I separated mandatory controls from preferences, which let the team move quickly without weakening the safety, quality, or customer promise that the operation existed to protect. For each alternative, I estimated the likely customer impact, labor requirement, operational reversibility, and worst credible failure, and I explained why my chosen path offered the best balance. I briefed affected teams before launch, checked understanding through questions rather than attendance, and made the escalation route clear to people working outside my shift. I also protected normal operations by defining which work would pause, which work would continue, and who could authorize expansion beyond the initial controlled scope. At every review point, I compared actual performance with the assumption that justified the decision. When they diverged, I changed the plan rather than defending the original recommendation. I made the cost of the choice visible as well as the benefit, because hiding overtime, rework, or displaced backlog would have made the result look stronger but less useful. Once the immediate issue was resolved, I held a short review with frontline representatives and partner teams, captured what failed in the original mechanism, and assigned permanent actions. Packaging cost per shipment fell 14%, annualized savings reached £186,000, cardboard use fell 23 tons, and damage remained statistically unchanged at 0.31%. Frugality means removing the mechanism that creates waste while measuring downstream quality, not simply negotiating a cheaper version of the same excess.